Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of See It or Skip It movie reviews with me and
Jim. Me?
we just got out of Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves?
Among Thieves, yeah.
Among Thieves. Thank you very much, Jim. Here's the log line I wrote or rewrote. A charming thief leads an unlikely band of adventurers on an epic quest to retrieve a long-lost relic and rescue one of their own from the clutches of a rogue lord and an evil sorceress. Should be advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, exactly.
Who wrote it? Who directed it? And who's in it, Jim?
Well, it was directed by Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly. I'm surprised they didn't credit themselves as dungeon masters. You know?
Right.
It's a lost opportunity. Screenplay by the same two guys, as well as Michael Gilio. And it had Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Regé-Jean Page, Justice Smith, Sophia Lillis, and of course Hugh Grant features prominently in it. There's one surprise cameo, but I won't spoil that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We're not in the spoiler zone, but I thought it was a nice little note in the film. Okay, Jim, I mean, it had a lot of highlights, had a lot of great moments, including, and I don't think I'm spoiling too much here, we'll see more clips, an obese dragon, morbidly obese.
Yes,
but
that's a new one.
There were moments where it seemed to actually, while leaning into the D&D kind of scene, was also maybe, it seemed to be having a little fun with some of the fantasy tropes and expectations. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, definitely. There's an aspect of it. You had some one character that was pretty serious. Like it was funny how serious he was, and that was played well, I think. Yeah. There's a lot going on. I'm sure on a second viewing you'd pick up other things as well. Mm-hmm. But they reference things like Baldur's Gate and a number of other things too. And
there is a paladin.
Yes, yeah. So I think it remains loyal to the spirit of the game, but there's a lot of little sort of Easter eggs too. I think a lot of fans would pick up on. So
that's another thing. You mentioned Baldur's Gate, which I got to admit, in my recent memory, and I played D&D when I was a kid, but I always thought of Baldur's Gate as one of those early video games.
Yeah.
I always thought of it as a video game, but it also made me think, would you consider this a video game movie or something different?
Well, before we were, you had brought it up earlier that it was more of a sort of resembled, I don't want to steal your thunder, but a bit of a heist movie. And I think that sort of video game, I don't know if it had those same video game elements, but it did resemble more of a, as you were saying before, as you pointed out, a heist movie in structure.
This is Lord of the Rings meets Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
But I think that also goes to the heart of a lot of D&D gameplay, which is get your crew together, go get some treasure. You got to go get a thing. I think, and you and I talked about this while we're still in the theater, there's a moment where, and I wrote it down, I just said side quest. And for some reason, I was a lot more okay with what were obvious side quests.
Yeah.
Until I reached a point where it's like, oh, this better not be just, oh, wait. What did you think? Like, I think you'd mentioned, talk about exposition and pacing.
I don't love side quests. A lot of times they seem like a distraction. The new season of The Mandalorian, for instance, just seems like one big side quest to me. But, you sort of want to move forward. You don't always want to divvy off. Mm-hmm. A lot of times there's make-work plot points, and I don't love those. Those seem to be more just sort of to kill time or what have you. But, I think it came together. It was, it was going forward anyway with it. But Like I said, it did take a while to get going, but once it got going, I felt that it paid off in the second and third acts.
Yeah. And I do think that much like a good heist movie, there's always you have to explain what you're going for, why you're going for it. You have to have some the vault has to be impregnable.
Yeah.
So you need special people with special skills.
Yeah.
All these things. Yeah. And then even some last minute trouble and so they hit all those beats. And I think it works here. It is another way of looking at these movies based on games, and maybe even another way of looking at fantasy movies in general and heist movies in general. Yeah. Was Chris Pine the right guy to lead this, how did I put it, an unlikely band of adventurers, as opposed to the woof IMDb log line?
Yeah. I think the term motley crew has been licensed now, but, I think he was. He was actually a little less Chris Piney than I normally like. He was dialed down a tiny bit, I think, but he was doing his thing.
Yeah,
I can follow him. He's sort of an easy guy to get behind and kind of fun and. Yeah.
The tone was right for the stakes that are laid out,
Yeah.
not just the big world stakes, but the personal stakes.
Yeah.
Let me maybe cut down. Can't be here forever, and this isn't a deep dive, but and yes, we are back in a Tim Hortons, as you can tell from their big. Look at how cool we are. Apparently, they're no longer kicking people out, or at least that's on hold for now.
Yes.
Evicting people from their homes. So, all right. Let me ask you this, Jim. First of all, did you find it entertaining? Did you enjoy your time in the theater?
Yeah, I did. I was again. I was a little bit worried at the start, but yeah, it eventually sort of grew into itself, and it was funny and fun, and there's a lot of neat little sort of jabs that it takes, and without spoiling anything, it was it got there eventually. A lot of time, we met. There was a number of monsters. We were just talking before we started filming, and you got to see some of the monsters at work, so that ones that we're familiar with.
Yeah, and do their thing without it being. How did you put it? Like there isn't mass armies of orcs or
kobolds and things like that you're hacking your way through.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of individual monsters. Hope you like owl bears, but no.
But they get their time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And more than one dragon.
Yes, yeah. I was also saying that the studio heads probably had a big meeting where they said, if we're calling it Dungeons and Dragons, we legally need to have more than one dragon. So there is more than one dragon.
Yeah. And although I chuckled at that, probably happened.
Otherwise, it would be Dungeon and Dragon, which just doesn't sound right. But,
okay. I think you've already answered this question, but maybe was the story well told?
I'll say this. There were a couple of surprising sort of like little dramatic points. I got actually a little verklempt at the end. And there was a sweet little bit with Michelle Rodriguez, who is awesome in this, by the way.
Absolutely.
Like physically, she was there. I bought her as like a formidable warrior. Like she was fantastic. Almost my favorite thing about the movie. But there was a couple moments there that it was, that it caught me. Like I'm like, come on, this is supposed to be funny and stuff. But I was getting a little bit. Verklempt at the end, so and it worked.
I think that leads into the way I wrote the question was, does it have anything to say, worth listening to? And maybe that's unfair to this. You know what? But I'll throw it out there. What do you think?
Well, I mean, Honor Among Thieves, it's about character, it's about doing the right thing. And I mean, it's a very basic moral question. There's a couple decisions that the hero has to make that Ed, the Chris Pine character, has to make, or
short for Edgen.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
No metaphor there.
So there's some real basic,
Yeah.
doing the right thing. I promised.
Loyalty.
One character says, "Well, I know what you just said, but is that what you actually believe?"
Yeah.
And I'm paraphrasing, but there's little sort of messages like that. But aside from being a good time and sort of trying to be a good character, I think that's
We're here all
pretty
night,
much
folks.
the extent of it. Yeah.
Okay, you know what? Then I think I would agree with you. We've seen some films where they're tackling really difficult subjects and complicated ones. This is a lot more straightforward. It is lighter. I think the themes explored are set at it's all well calibrated.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons it does, even though, yeah, you're right, they're pretty simple, pretty standard fare,
Yeah.
Especially for this kind of movie, it works because the performers commit to the bit.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think that's also because the filmmakers, they obviously, well, if they don't love D&D, boy, they fake it well.
Yeah.
Like, it really felt like they had spent time in a basement. Not saying that I ever spent time in a basement playing this game, or entire weekends. But anyway, that they spent that time playing this game, and while they at times would maybe take a little poke at it, it was all in good fun.
Yeah.
And so they end up with a movie that's quite a little sweetheart. Maybe a little long at times, but I don't know. By the end of it, I was like, kind of, yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
There's even props in there where you're like, it's refreshing to see not this perfect CGI thing, but an obvious kind of lame puppet.
there was credits for puppeteers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Not all the puppets were lame, folks. I'm just talking. There's one where it was like kind of, well, that's obviously a puppet. But it fits the tone. One more thing I would add as far as well told, it is, again, and I think about this when I saw Shazam a few weeks ago, it's bright. It's got color when it needs color. You don't feel like everyone's ragging on Marvel movies now, and I'm not sure that's fair, but for a good decade or more, there was that kind of washed out look and that dark look that I'm kind of glad we're getting out of. Or coming into the light.
It's a good looking movie. Like the design, some of it's sort of over designed a little,
but I think in keeping with D&D.
Yeah, but not entirely. And once you get into the sort of simple villages and homes and things like that, it's actually pretty cool.
Reminds me of early like Fellowship of the Ring.
Production design, is really quite good. But and let's not forget, if you do see it in a movie theater, folks, you're treated to a little prologue.
That's fact, right, I forgot. We're heroes.
We are heroes, and frankly, you're heroes for watching this. They say you're heroes for coming to the movie theater and watching
the real
heroes. The real heroes. And Chris Pine sitting there in high-waisted pants, and you can tell they're high-waisted, even though
he's like a zoot suity thing.
And Hugh Grant looks like he wants to put a gun to his head. And none of them are looking at the camera. They're all just looking a little bit off.
Well, I'm wondering
weirdest thing.
Well, I suspect in that, and it's this little prologue that they roll out, obviously,
like hostages.
Well, I wonder if none of them were ever in the room at the same time. I bet you it's all green screen, and they're,
that's true.
They just composited it, but like a Vanity Fair cover or a Vogue cover with like 8 different celebrities. They're not that same.
So there's that to look forward to.
Yeah. So you're a hero, folks, if you go see the movie at a theater, like Jim and I are. Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, see it or skip it.
I would say see it.
Give me one good reason.
Well, like D&D, it took a while to set up, but once it got going, I think the second and third acts paid off.
Yeah. I would agree with you, Jim. I think it's a definite see it. For me, simple enough. It was fun.
Yeah,
I
fun.
enjoyed myself. Yeah. Anyway, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and
See you Sunday.
bye-bye.